welcome back once again to the annual Alice Cooper review that I do every single year, and I always upload either the day before Halloween or Halloween itself, when I really, should have uploaded it 2 weeks before Halloween. But speaking of things I should have done, this is also the first video I have made in almost 6 months. Actually, no, over 6 months. I feel like this is something that happens every year, that I always tell you guys in January. I'm always like, guys, I promise this year is going to be the year that I don't take 6 months off to study Plotinus and try to write a postmodern novel connecting Platonist metaphysics to the Mothman prophecies by John Keel. And then, inevitably, every year, I disappear for 6 months to study Plotinus and try to write a book that connects Platonist metaphysics to the Mothman prophecies by John Keel. This year's Alice album of choice is his 1991 release, Hey Stoopid. This is the fourth and last of his hair metal albums, and I'm gonna be completely real with you, this is the best one. I still don't know that I would call it a masterpiece or even on the same level as like early 80s Coop, but it is a definite step over the 3 albums that precede it, and a huge improvement on Trash. Which is kind of interesting because when you listen to it, which I, of course, have done several times, and I did just this afternoon to refresh my memory, when you listen to this album, it's not that different than Trash. In fact, a lot of the time when I was listening to it this afternoon, I was thinking to myself, by all rights, I should be giving this the same kind of non-review that I gave Trash last year. And just saying that, like, I have nothing to say here. It's competent to decent hair metal, so on and so forth. I've got nothing to say here. It's hair metal, which is a cop-out to some extent, but it also genuinely it expresses how I feel about Trash, and that, like, there is really not that much to say about Trash. It is a good to decent 1989 hair metal album. And this, in a very similar way, you could very easily say this is a good to decent 1991 hair metal album. But for whatever reason, and it's, as I said, it's hard for me to tell you exactly why, this is more than that. This is a better album than Trash by a very, very significant margin. It's genuinely quite good. It's the only one of these Alice hair metal albums that I think I could recommend to somebody who is not a glam metal fan, and that I think there's a chance they could really dig. Because there is some fun stuff on here. It's the best way I could describe this album is that it's like if you put the best moments from the 3 Alice hair metal albums that preceded it onto one disc. It's very much, the highlights, the sleazy, cheesy fun, the sort of like almost kind of guilty pleasure, kind of late 80s pop metal kind of side of those albums. But it's good the whole way through, mostly. There are some moments that are less than great. In particular, this is an album that is 56 minutes long, when this kind of record, I think, should be like 39 minutes tops. But in the big picture, it's all quite good, and it's just a lot of fun. I think for me, what makes this a big step over the albums that preceded it is that it has the right combination of sleazy 70s Alice fun and that kind of like spook show persona he had, and the kind of thing he was trying to do on Trash, where you get like, it's a fairly commercial, glam metal record, heavy on the ballads, heavy on the big radio songs, that's just fun to listen to. He's not reinventing the wheel here. I mean, it's nothing strange, it's nothing out of the ordinary. We're a long, long, long way from $1 Million Babies. Never mind Killer or Pretties for You. But it's just a fun record. It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing if you're like me, you're probably not going to throw on the whole year round. But for like goofy, cheesy, fun Halloween music that still has some real substance to it. This is the kind of thing that Alice Cooper, especially like a modern Alice Cooper, does best. And I think it's interesting to sort of look back on this era of Alice and the sort of the hair metal stuff, because I know there are people who come at Alice Cooper and into Alice Cooper, and there are people who come at Alice Cooper and are into Alice Cooper from a lot of different angles. There are classic rock fans. There are, people who are into sort of different stuff. There's even like some people, like to an extent I fall into this, who are into Alice through like the Zappa connection. And I'll talk more about this at the end. One of the things I find interesting is that the audience Alice picked up during this era, those 4 hair metal albums, is still the audience he has today. Those are still the kinds of crowds he goes to. He doesn't. I'm generalizing here, and I know it's not entirely fair, but I mean this in like the most affectionately generalizing way imaginable. Audience Alice performs for that he entertains today, the people he tours with, it's not so much those people from the 70s, it's not like a lot of other bands and performers of his era. It's not those people from the 70s. It's not like the classic rock heads and like the aging dads. Well, I mean, there are aging dads in the audience, but they're aging dads of a different vintage, and aging moms too. It is like the hair metal crowd, the kind of people who go see Rob Zombie, the kind of people who go see Marilyn Manson. It's a different crowd. And a lot of that, I think, is from this era. But anyway, that's probably enough for the intro. So, a little bit like my trash video, I'm not going to do things exactly the way I normally do. Partially because I don't have enough to say about this album. I like it, but like most of my thoughts on the album I just gave to you in the intro. I don't have in-depth, like track by 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 track thoughts on this album. That bit went on a little bit too long. Probably going to cut it down in the editing process. The way I do with a lot of other Alice Cooper albums, like the way I do with the early 80s ones, or the way I do with the Alice album that comes after this, The Last Temptation, which I think I've gone on record before as saying that The Last Temptation is like the last great Alice Cooper album. I still have not heard The Eyes of Alice Cooper. I've heard the albums around it, but I have not heard it, which I probably need to rectify one of these years. But to date, I still stand by that for the most part. Last Temptation is the last great Alice album. I'll probably talk about it one of these years. Hey Stoopid, fun hair metal. This is the kind of stuff that makes it difficult for me to actually write off the genre the way a lot of people do. It's fun stuff. Really cool. There's hints of, Alice's kind of, I guess you would call it his Christianity, because he is. I always forget whether he's born again or, what it is. I mean, he has roots in the church. I believe his father was a minister. But anyway, there's little hints of that, which you get a lot of on the next album. There's a lot of that on The Next Temptation, which is almost a Faust story, really. But Love's a Loaded Gun, cool kind of hair metal ballad, nice stuff. Snakebite. Rewrite of Poison in many respects, maybe not in terms of the actual progressions and the song itself, but very much in terms of the vibe, what it's going for. I think I like it better than Poison, although it's maybe not quite as catchy. Burning Our Bed, I like the intro. It's got some cool moments. Dangerous Tonight, scratch what I said, I am taking this track by track. I like this too, not cool pop hair metal stuff. Might As Well Be on Mars, kind of interesting ballad, like the lyrical conceit, fun stuff. And then you get the last big single. I think this might be the song that this album is remembered for the most by Coop fans, Feed My Frankenstein. And it's good stuff. It's a lot of fun. it really blends the, like, Alice as, like, gothy middle-aged lover man thing he was doing on Trash, and the sort of, like, spook show Alice of the 70s solo stuff and those first two hair metal albums really quite effectively. It might be the best single he put out during this period, although I am partial to quite a few of the hits from this part of his career. After that, the quality of the album goes downhill a little bit for me. There are some cool songs on the back half. I particularly like Die For You and the closing wind-up toy, which while itself not my favorite thing, hints heavily at the direction of the next album because it brings back the Steven character from Welcome to My Nightmare, now confined in an insane asylum. Anyway, so that was Hey Stoopid. I'm not even going to try to pretend that this was recorded on the same day. I had a lot of technical difficulties making this video, which is ultimately why it is going up so late, which, you know, I made that joke in the intro because I kind of knew in the back of my head. I was like, I didn't do this 3 weeks ago, ergo, this is going to wind up happening, and it has, so. Anyway, this is an album. This is a very good album, relatively speaking. How much you get out of all of these albums, all four of the Alice hair metal albums, heavily relies on what you get out of hair metal to begin with. If you like this stuff, maybe you'll rate it differently. You know, I didn't do the thing on either of these albums where I sort of put it up against you know, like the Crew stuff, against even like the sort of like later period Def Leppard, or like, you know, what do I know, like Rat or Winger or Poison, or even like older bands that dabbled in this sound. You know, I didn't do that. I let these albums stand on their own. Because that's the way I look at them. If you look at this stuff the way I do, where it's like, yeah, I don't like glam metal, but I have a soft spot for it. You know, it has this kind of goofy, like, 80s cheese and a certain attendant charisma that comes from that. You know, I think these albums are albums you can get a lot out of, particularly this one and Constrictor and Raise Your Fist and Yell, because I think those have a lot of moments that are like goofy and fun and sort of like cheesy and self-aware in a way that a lot of previous Alice stuff was cheesy and self-aware. But this one I think is the best because I think it's the most self-aware. I think he finally on this album finds a happy medium between the kind of like the commerciality of the sound and the way that, you know, he was playing to the radio on all of these albums, and the sort of idiosyncratic sort of Alice Cooper thing and the personality that he brings, you know, to all of his performances and all of his eras. And he found a way to reconcile those two things in a way that was finally acceptable from the perspective of somebody who thinks that the best period of his career was that early stuff from 1969 to 1974. Anyway, that's really about it. I don't have a whole lot left to say about this album. I really kind of said it all in the intro to this video. It's good. I recommend it. You know, I'm not going to say that the next year will be different, because it probably won't be. But I will be back soon with. I'm going to finish up a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to do the In Utero video. I'm going to do The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And then I have a Revolver video that may come out sooner, may come out later. But it's definitely coming out before the end of the year. So, you know, I've got a lot on my plate in the last 2 months of the year. I'm reading Ulysses. You know, anyway. Until next time, I will see you all later. Have a happy Halloween.